Everyday Life with Guardsmares, Chapter 17, Part 2. Honorbound's point of view. Glamorspear had her shield back up again and was looking around for a new place to set up.
Specialist! Hey, Specialist!
Could she not hear Honor under that fancy helmet of hers?
Specialist Glamorspear!
The unicorn's head swiveled around to her, and she started trotting her way. Pointing one hoof at the nearest little peak in the fallow farmer's field, Honor cupped the other one to her mouth.
Set up on that hill and await further instructions.
Glamorspear nodded and broke into a gallop towards the indicated position. Okay, so that was step 1. Over at the carriage, Anonymous was hunched over the luggage box at the back of the coach, digging through the various surveying equipment the two of them had hunted for almost all day yesterday. As Glamorspear took up her post, her shield was raised, and she looked over at the corporal expectantly. She couldn't offer anything more but to hold up a hoof as a sign for her to wait. At last, she could see Anonymous trotting back towards her, a large, heavy-looking metal object slung over her shoulder. It was a pair of enormously large, strange-looking brass binoculars. She remembered that device. It was one of the most troublesome items to acquire yesterday. But what was it called again? Honor gave it some thought.
Something about range... Oh, a coincidence rangefinder, that's what it was.
Recalling her discussions with a royal engineer, she remembered that it was some kind of device for determining how far any object was, even if its size wasn't even known. All she really knew was that he had spotted it in a supply catalog, and he had insisted that a pair be lent to him. The Palace Depot commander had tried to stonewall him, saying it was an extremely precious piece of equipment normally used only on boats, and that they didn't stock such items in the palace anyway. Her VIP hadn't relented, looming over the commander and waving Celestia's writ. In the end, two of the depot underlings had wound up having to go gallop halfway out of the city all the way down to the Riverside Naval Depot, just to get it for him. At the time, Honorbound hadn't asked what it was for, since Anonymous had sent her to collect a few items from the palace warehouse shelves personally. Right then, all she could tell was that it looked very, very heavy, watching as Anonymous struggled up the hill to come up beside her.
Wasn't there a tripod with that, sir?
Yes, but I'm too tall for it. And anyways, the mount was designed for naval gunnery and won't allow me to look straight up. Hefting the huge thing off of his shoulder, he gently placed it down onto the ground and crouched low to get a solid grip. Okay, let me know if you see him before me, Corporal. Both of them started to scan the sky, searching for Lieutenant Killfeather, and Glamorspear was out there searching for him too. His last 2 strikes were from down low, and he'd escaped from down low last time too. Something told her that next time he'd be using the cloud cover. And that's when she spotted him.
There, sir! 2 o'clock, very high.
He followed her hoof to where Icepone was coming in for another attack run. At that distance, he was on Glamorspear in seconds, crashing into her shield while she was looking the other way completely. Anonymous stood up again with the enormous device in his hands. He had to swing his arms just to bring it up to his eyes, and Bound saw him lean back from the weight of it, grunting with the effort. She doubted that he'd be able to hold it very steady, or for very long. There was a ticking noise while he twisted a ring on the right barrel, following Killfeather's retreat up into the sky. Eventually, the Pegasus was completely out of her sight, although Anonymous still seemed to be following him. The seconds stretched out as she waited for the next step, and that's when Anonymous bellowed out a command in a voice louder than all the drill sergeants at Fort Horseshoe Bend put together. 3. Target Pegasus 7 o'clock high, range 1500 meters, steady left. Glamorspear turned to face them both, and the look on her face was one of utter confusion. The corporal shot her an angry glare and pointed north with one hoof, and then swept out 7 o'clock with the second. Glamorspear seemed to get it, reorientating her body with a polar axis and scanning the sky behind her for her target. Target 6 o'clock high, range 1300 meters approaching left. Killfeather was still beyond visual range, but Glamorspear still had her shield up.
Sir, you'll want her to lower her shields until he gets too close.
He bellowed again. Shields down! Out in the fields, the unicorn shield instantly dropped. 5 o'clock medium, 1200 meters descending approaching left. Honor heard the royal engineer grunts as he took a step to rotate in place. With a deep breath, he rolled his shoulders and tried to brace himself. 4 o'clock medium, range 1100, descending steady left.
No, 8 o'clock, yeah, 8 o'clock, range your butt. 6 o'clock.
12 o'clock. Over at the bridge, the rest of Killfeather's squadron had cottoned on to what the royal engineer was doing, and were trying to run interference. They were loud, but even if they all worked together as a chorus, Honorbound doubted they could match the lungs of the royal engineer. 3 o'clock low, range 1000, ascending approaching left. This must be it. He was on the deck at 1000 meters and popping up to gain some elevation before the final dive. As loud as Anonymous was, there was no way Killfeather should have any idea that he'd been spotted. When he got a little closer, then maybe he'd even think that he'd hit the jackpot, what with Glamorspear's shield being down. 2 o'clock medium, range 900, approaching left. That announcement was followed by another groan. Anonymous's arms were starting to shake under the weight, but it looked like Glamorspear had spotted her target and she turned to face the lieutenant. There was something funny going on above her head, though. Where there should have been 3 or 4 waiting magical spear tips, Honor could see 20. And more were popping in and join them.
Is she alright?
Lily Glamour Spear's point of view. 1 o'clock medium, range 800 approaching left! How in Equestria could one creature be so loud? Glamour Spear wasn't so much hearing the Royal Engineer as she was feeling his voice somehow echo inside of her skull. Was it some kind of magic? Either way, thanks to him and those goofy big binoculars, she was finally drawing a bead on Killfeather in his way in. At this range, he was still a little bit more than a speck, but a speck that was getting bigger by the second. This was it. He was trying for a medium entry into a dive, circling around where he thought she didn't see him. A 3-round burst wouldn't be enough. 4 rounds wouldn't do either. Even 5 was just too few. There wouldn't be any targets left after this one, so she broke the normal rules of engagement and poured every drop of energy she had left into her next volley. It had to be one single glorious alpha strike to end the fight in one fell blow. 2 o'clock medium, range 700 approaching right! 500 meters was her maximum effective range, so should she fire when he hit that limit? Or take a chance and wait until he was closer and it would be even harder for him to dodge? He could close 100 meters in the blink of an eye. She settled on 400. At that range, he would just barely have gotten a decent look at her while he'd be a decent target in her optics. Meanwhile, for ammunition, all she could think of was more, loading up spear after spear. She didn't even want to look up. There were probably 30 more rounds up there ready to go, and she felt her sweat pooling in her coat. 3 o'clock medium, range 600 approaching straight!
Any second now.
Her breathing became labored as her vision started to blur. She blinked rapidly to clear the haze, but it didn't go away. And the haze, it was purple?
Oh, Buck, are you mad or burning yourself?
550!
Wait, just how many rounds did I load?
She did not dare break eye contact with her target for even a second, but she started to feel a crushing weight on her back. 500! The physical consequences of severely overloading her horn didn't matter now. She would deal with a mana burn blowback after she got the shot off. 400!
Feel the wrath of a Centurion of the Ram!
In her magnified targeting view, Glamour Spear watched what must have been thousands of spear tips go hurtling towards Killfeather. She was completely deafened by the effect and could feel her stomach turning from the mana burn recoil.
Oh, I am going to feel bad in a second or two.
But probably not as bad as Valiant felt right then. Hundreds of rounds flew past him, but hundreds more thundered home, crashing into his body and armor. In the blink of an eye, his sabots were pounded straight off of his hooves. He barely got his 4 legs up in time to cover his face before his criniere was shredded and his helmet was tumbling off. Meanwhile, what had once been a magnificent pair of feathered wings had been reduced to nothing more than 2 fleshy stalks and a white puff of smoke. More telekinetic rounds sliced up the straps on his pectoral piece and sent it hurtling off behind him. And then it was the sheer weight of all those spear tips, blunted by the protective field of the MXP totem, that sent him into an involuntary sideways spin through the cumulative impacts. The tail end of the biggest anti-air barrage Equestria had ever seen slammed into his left flank, utterly destroying his flankered armor. Something desperately wanted to escape from Lily's insides, and she swallowed it back down to see things out. It only took a few seconds for Valiant Icebone Killfeather to drop to the ground, and he went down hard. What little remained of his armor plating went careening off as he tumbled sideways through the field, like a barrel flung off of Candlelight's highest peak. Finally, he came to a stop, and he did not get up.
Yes! Gotcha, you sucker!
And then she tasted bile in her mouth.
Uh-oh.
Lily's friend from down below had started knocking again, and she kneeled over forward. It's a bittersweet victory, what with getting to shoot Killfeather a bunch of times, but then throwing up afterwards. It's a good trade though. Now let's hop on over to our overpowered donators. Top donators: TacoCat598, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Gauntlet, and only one thing. Zar630, Strix, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Magazine, Crazy Killer 557, Dospo, Madman Stan, Delta Omega, Jack Hedge, RuneTython9852, Hunter Norman, Stephen Bingham, McDoofus456, and many more powerful people. Thank you all very much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.